We're going to speak to Labour about this very issue now because we are joined by the Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Pat McFadden. Good morning to you. I mean, it is indefensible, but I suppose the question on a lot of people's minds is if she thought those words and she wrote them in an email, even if she's retracted her comments, is that enough?
Well, you know, I was deeply saddened to see what she wrote yesterday. When it comes to a discussion of this issue of race and racism and the history of racism, you can't have a hierarchy of victimhood. And completely obvious and undeniable that Jewish people, for example, throughout history have been subject to terrible racism. So it doesn't represent the worldview of the Labour Party. I'm very sad that she said it, and I think that the Chief Whip and the party leader had no option but to take the action to suspend her that they took yesterday.
Well, look, Keir Starmer's told us repeatedly, after all the problems that you've had in the past, that the Labour Party was now clear of these issues and it's a party people could trust in on these issues. Clearly, he's been wrong on that. How does he move forward now? Does she need to be thrown out of the party?
Well, I think he's genuine about that. I mean, when he became party leader 3 years ago, it was obvious to all of us that you couldn't just have the same worldview, the same policies, the same culture, but a different person in a different suit. That wasn't going to work. You needed top to bottom change. And if you look, for example, at Keir Starmer's statements in the past 3 years, and in particular at his response to the Equality and Human Rights Commission report just a couple of months ago, it's clear that he's genuine about wanting to turn the page on that. So I think he will make sure that the culture change that is needed happens. That's why the action that was taken yesterday took place, and I'm sure that will underline what he and the Chief Whip do in the future.
Your party was placed recently into special measures. I know it recently came out, but Greg Hand says that Labour shows they haven't really changed since all of this. No,
I reject that. I mean, we came out of special measures because we had changed, and we have changed. But change is not an overnight one-act thing. It's an ongoing process, and I think that we need to keep on changing to make sure that when we get to the next election, we're offering not just a different leader, but a different worldview, a different policy platform, one much more in tune with the needs of today, the challenges facing the country in the 21st century, and the views of our voters and potential voters. And we've made a lot of progress on that in the last few years, but of course we're going to keep on going in that direction.
OK, well, you head in that direction, great. Can you do that if you have people like Diane Abbott, with the views she's expressed, being a member of the Labour Party? You got rid of Jeremy Corbyn.
Well, look, who's a member and who's not, I don't get to decide that. But let me give you this example of the kind of action I mean by changing the worldview. When Russia invaded Ukraine, a number of MPs wanted to sign a letter which was basically equivocating on this and taking what you might call the traditional Stop the War coalition, which is really about stopping the West, view of the world. And Keir Starmer told them, you can either sign up to statements like that or you can be a Labour MP, but you can't be both.
Yeah.
And he made it very, very clear at the time, and I think that underlines his view on these things.
Yeah, OK. Look, I know it's difficult, because I know you will say, well, look, I can't speak for the Labour Party in terms of what will happen with this investigation now and this hearing that Diane Abbott will go through. She's been suspended as a Labour MP, but she's still a member of the Labour Party.
Yeah.
In your own personal view, I mean, just you, Pat, should she go?
Honestly, it's not a decision for me who's a member or who's a candidate.
I know it's not.
That is decided by the Chief Whip and the leader.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm not asking you to sort of decide what should happen to her. I'm just thinking what you think. I mean, you must have an opinion.
Look, I think my views on these matters are pretty clear and have been clear for some years. I didn't hold with the worldview that Jeremy Corbyn held when he was leader. I lost my frontbench job over that. I called it out quite clearly when I was a backbench Labour MP. I'm pleased with the position that we are in today on worldview, for example, on Russia and Ukraine, where Keir Starmer's made clear we support Ukraine, we support our fellow democracies, we stand behind NATO. We remember where the party that founded NATO, the post-war Labour government headed by Clement Attlee, that's the Labour tradition I represent.
Yeah.
That's my views. I think there's no secret about them.
Right, so you won't explicitly say then that you think she should be booted out, but we can read between the lines, and I guess we can also then safely assume you won't be persuaded by arguments that will be made from within your own party that, hang on a minute, she's done a huge amount for race relations, not only as the first female black MP, I think, but also she's been a long-serving Labour MP who has worked hard on race issues, but that doesn't go far enough for you.
Well, look, it's definitely true that Diane Abbott's been subject to the most appalling racism herself. And she was a pioneer when she was elected in 1987, the first black woman to be elected. And she's suffered terrible abuse over the years. But I still believe there isn't a hierarchy of victimhood when it comes to racism. And what we've all got to strive for is a society where no one is discriminated against on grounds of race or creed. Now, we're not there yet. It's a work in progress, but that's what we should all believe in, and that's what today's Labour Party stands for.
Can I just ask you, you'll have seen the apology that she had said, well, that this wasn't, this was a first draft of the letter and, shouldn't have been sent in, which is a very strange thing to say. Well, Clive, one of our viewers and listeners, says, I've seldomly heard such an insincere and mealy-mouthed apology. Do you agree?
Well, I don't think the issue's drafting. I think the issue was content, and the content of it was clearly wrong in what it said.
So it was a mealy-mouthed apology. You don't believe that apology then?
No, I'm not saying I don't believe the apology. I think if someone apologises, you should take it at face value and you should accept that they're sincere about that. But what she said in the letter was clearly wrong, wrong in historical terms, and wrong to write it and send it to a newspaper like that.
I just want to read another view that's come in from one of our audience. Annette says, I abhor Diane Abbott's politics, but surely she has a right to her beliefs and freedom to express them. The Labour leadership must have always known about her thinking, but have accepted her as she is. And I put it to you that will be the challenge as we're facing an election in a couple of weeks, that people will conclude that is an acceptable view within the Labour Party.
Well, if it was an acceptable view, she wouldn't have been suspended yesterday, and she was very quickly. And I think that the Chief Whip was right to take the speedy action that he did. And in taking that action, he made it clear that we weren't going to have any hierarchy of racism in the Labour Party, that we were going to try to treat everybody equally, regardless of race or creed. That's where we stand, and that's what today's Labour Party is about.
OK, Pat McFadden, really appreciate you talking to us about this morning. Thank you very much indeed.